Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Uncle Matt's Cookery Lessons. Another keto recipe, a pastry. Beautiful looking pastry. Hello, in this video I'll be making a keto pastry, a shortcrust pastry recipe. I've got the recipe from the Keto Fitness Club. I'll put a link for them down below, and I think you're going to really like this one. It works. It really works. Okay, there's the ingredients all lined up there, but I will leave the full recipe below in the description. So these are the flours. That's ground almond, that is coconut flour, that is some grated parmesan, I've just grated that myself, Xanthan gum, which is the more of the exotic ingredients here. Give that a thorough mixing together, and then I'm going to add in the unsalted butter. I'm not putting any salt into this because the parmesan is in there and it's already salty. So I want to coat all that butter with the flour, and then I want to get it super cold, so in the freezer, about 10 minutes or so. So this is 10 minutes later, and it doesn't take long. I like to use a food processor again. I'm just keeping the heat from my fingers away from this. You end up with a much nicer pastry. So that took 20 seconds maybe to get all breadcrumby like that. In with your one egg. Again, I had that egg in the freezer. Not in the freezer, sorry, in the fridge. And this is, I don't know, that took 10 seconds or so to become all doughy like that. One lump, stop it at that point. That is the pastry done. So obviously that would be a really short video, wouldn't it, if I just went, there you go, pastry's made. So let's use this, and I thought, well, I like quiche, and quiche is, I think, something that people that are denying themselves carbs and sugar and things like that are probably really missing, because you can't quite get there. You can have only so many frittatas, right? So here's quiche. We're going to do it, forming that dough into a nice sort of round shape, a disc, because we're going to be rolling it into a round flan case. So, you know, round goes better into round. It just does. I think people wonder why I do this. I crinkle up the paper because it makes it easier to form into the shape I want it to be. So a couple of big sheets of baking parchment, and you're not going to be able to do this without that. It would just stick to any surface you're using, and obviously you'd have to use tons of, say, coconut flour to roll it in. It's not worth it. Use this method, it's great, but you'll find that it kind of sticks to the paper a bit. So each time I roll it a bit, I also give it a small turn. This helps keep it round, but I just peel off the paper and then put it back on. And at some stage here, when I sped it up, I actually flip this thing over just to peel off it from the paper from the other side. But just keep rolling, turning, lifting the paper off, put it back down, rolling and turning, and get it as nice, as flat as you possibly can, as it feels nice and even. Is it big enough for my flan case? And I'm looking at it and thinking, it might not be quite big enough. And I just about got away with it. So I'm going to roll that a little bit longer. I would suggest using a flan case that's not quite as big or not quite as deep as my one, or making a double up on the pastry recipe. And if you've got leftovers, you can use it for other things. Nice tomato tart or something, it's great. But that's the thickness I went to. It was really thin for this pastry. Any thinner, you're just not going to be able to work with it. It's not, you know, it's not as easy as a regular shortcrust pastry. But I promise you, the end results are every bit as good. It's gorgeous. It really works. So this is the technique I like for getting it on exactly over the sort of the centre of the flan case, which I lightly greased, and I had a bit of greased baking parchment in the very bottom as well, just sort of belt and braces, you know. Let's make sure this quiche comes out afterwards. And you're going to see here, no matter how delicate you are, it's going to tear. It doesn't have the gluten in it, you know, to sort of to hold it together, that stretchiness, so it is going to tear, but it's fine. You can just plug it and patch it with the leftover bits of pastry. So taking your time with your fingertips to gently push it into all of the little corners so that you don't have any natural tears when it's baking. But you see me pointing there, there's a hole there, so get a bit of that pastry and plug that hole. Doesn't matter on the inside if it's not too pretty, because no one's going to see. But so just take your time again and be as delicate anywhere you think where it looks a bit weak, you know, a bit of a, not even necessarily whole, but just a bit thin. I can see a bit of the back there, it looks a bit thin, but I got away with it. And you can cut it off and keep those trimmings left over, because we might need some of that later. But this one doesn't seem to sink when you bake it, so that's why I've been cutting off the top every time I've been doing this. Okay, so a bit of the baking parchment in. We're going to blind bake. So those are ceramic baking beans. So you can use dried beans, dried rice, anything that will sort of hold it in the pastry in its place while it has a bake, because you want it to be nice and crispy. You don't want a soggy bottom. This isn't really me showing you how to do a full quiche recipe, so I'm racing through this, but that was me beating eggs. I nicked about half of a beaten egg. I'm going to use that a bit later, you'll see. That was double cream or heavy cream, and that's water, so not milk. When I did my bechamel recipe for keto, I used milk, and I got told off, and they're right, because it's not keto. So milk and cream, as a full recipe down below. That's the egg custard done, the quiche, the flan mixture. So there's some onions and bacon. I did some grated cheddar cheese. I'm just going to saute the bacon first for a little while in with the onions, and that just get that till that looks unbelievably tasty. And just that's cooked enough. We don't need to get that fully caramelised. So that was 25 minutes. You can see that it's toasty around the top, so I want to remove the baking beans. They've done their job, thank you. And that's why I'm using that about half of an egg that I borrowed from the mixture, just to help make this more waterproof. So when it goes back in the oven, and I also noticed there's a couple of thin bits there, so I put a little bit of those extra bits of pastry in there. Was it necessary? Maybe not. But I didn't have any holes, that's great. But yeah, the brushing of the egg and then back in the oven for another 10 minutes or so makes it have a much better chance of being more waterproof, because the egg seals and forms hopefully a waterproof seal, if that makes sense. So this is a quiche, classic quiche Lorraine. Bacon and onion in there, the quiche mixture, the cheese. I guess the French is there. They'd probably use Gruyere, wouldn't they? Or no cheese, maybe. But anyway, that's looking fab. Back in the oven, same temperature as before. That was about an hour, but keep your eye on it. When it just wobbles, it's going to be there. And you could always put this in the fridge for a while, even overnight. But I was impatient. I wanted to show you how lovely that pastry looks. It's an absolute winner. So removing the bottom of the flan case and the bit of paper that I had there, just to make sure it didn't stick. And I feel a bit smug here. This is absolutely fantastic. It'd be easier to cut this from cold, by the way, as well, but this was me being impatient. So let's get a slice of this beautiful looking quiche. Does it look good? Yeah, it looks really good. Would you know that that was keto? I don't think so. And obviously the quiche tastes nice. But in a minute, I'm just gonna see how the pastry is, and you see it's crumbly but firm, and it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's not too hard. It's great. So anyway, over to me for the tasting. So the pastry is just wonderful, incredibly incredibly delicate, crumbly, a little bit tricky to work with. So if you use that technique I showed you there for rolling it between the parchment, but I think you'll just really like it. And if you really are missing something like that, definitely give it a try. I think you will not be disappointed. What else can I say while I'm here? If you're going to like and subscribe and leave comments and things like that, I'll be most grateful to you. Apparently it helps with the algorithm, but I think I've given up on that working by now. But yeah, really appreciate you being here. And also, if you're still watching this right at this point here, and you are interested in more like the keto side of things, I have set up another YouTube channel. It's called Uncle Matt Does Keto. It's a little bit of a lie, because obviously I'm not doing full-on keto, but I am, carbs and sugar have gone. So on that one, it's not about recipes, it's just about talking about different issues with it, and how you might be getting on. So if you do want to go over there, I would love people to leave me some comments on how they're getting on, if they're trying to lose weight, their struggles, what they find is really working for them, stuff like that. So anyway, go on over to Uncle Matt Does Keto if you like. I'll leave the link below. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video coming really soon. Bye. Quiche though.